No one knew why my nonverbal brother attacked our neighbor. Then the neighbor's wife stood up. Tommy has been nonverbal his whole life. He was born with the cord wrapped around his neck and went too long without oxygen, and the doctors told my parents he'd never talk or read or live independently, but Tommy understood everything. He knew when I was sad before I did, and he'd bring me his favorite stuffed animal without being asked. He watched the world more closely than anyone I've ever known. We lived next door to Dr. Richard Alderman for 15 years, and everyone on our street loved him. He was a pediatrician who ran a free clinic on weekends and coached Little League, and brought his wife Grace flowers every Friday like clockwork. They were the couple everyone wanted to be. When Tommy climbed through their window with a hammer, no one could understand why. The police found him standing over Richard, who was bleeding from a gash in his forehead, and Grace was huddled in the corner screaming. Tommy couldn't explain what he'd seen or why he'd done it, so the cops just saw a mentally disabled man covered in blood holding a weapon over a pillar of the community. Richard told them Tommy had broken in unprovoked and attacked him like an animal, and everyone believed him because why wouldn't they? My parents were humiliated, and my mother kept saying, how could he do this to us? Richard pressed felony assault charges, and his lawyer pushed for attempted murder. Our lawyer sat us down and said, no jury is going to believe a nonverbal disabled man over a pediatrician who runs a free clinic. We should plead guilty and hope for a mental institution instead of prison. I refused. I didn't know why Tommy did what he did, but I knew my brother. He cried when he accidentally stepped on bugs. He wouldn't hurt someone without a reason. The trial started 3 weeks later. Richard sat behind the prosecutor's table looking wounded and sympathetic with a bandage still on his forehead, and my parents sat on the opposite side of the courtroom from me because they thought I'd lost my mind for not taking the plea deal. The prosecutor said, Dr. Alderman, can you describe what happened the night of the attack? Richard's voice cracked as he said, I was getting ready for bed when I heard glass breaking. Before I could react, this man was on top of me swinging a hammer at my head. I thought I was going to die in front of my wife. The prosecutor said, had you ever interacted with the defendant before? Richard said, he lives next door. I always waved, tried to be friendly, but he never responded. I never imagined he was capable of something like this. The prosecutor showed the jury photos of Richard's injuries and the bloody hammer, and I watched their faces harden against my brother. Our lawyer had nothing, no defense, no explanation. I was starting to think I'd made a terrible mistake refusing the plea deal. Then the courtroom doors opened and Grace Alderman walked in. Richard's head snapped around. She walked straight to our lawyer and whispered something, and his eyes went wide. He stood up and said, Your Honor, the defense would like to call Grace Alderman to the stand. The prosecutor jumped up. Objection, she's not on the witness list. The judge said, I'll allow it. Grace walked to the stand slowly wearing a short-sleeved dress, and someone in the jury gasped. Her arms were covered in bruises, yellow and purple and green, some old and some fresh. I felt the air leave my lungs. Richard jumped up screaming, Grace, what the hell are you doing? The judge slammed his gavel. Sit down, Dr. Alderman. Our lawyer said, Mrs. Alderman, can you tell the court what really happened that night? Grace looked at Richard and then looked away and said, my husband was choking me because I burned dinner. He had me pinned against the counter with his hands around my throat and I couldn't breathe. I thought I was going to die. And then the window broke and Tommy came through and hit him with the hammer and saved my life. The courtroom exploded. Richard was on his feet screaming, she's lying. She's mentally ill. I've never touched her in my life. The judge yelled, order. Bailiffs restrain Dr. Alderman. Our lawyer said, how long has your husband been abusing you, Mrs. Alderman? She said, 15 years. Since our wedding night. Tommy's window faces our backyard. He must have seen it happen before. He knew what Richard was. Our lawyer submitted the hospital records Grace had brought with her, documenting dozens of falls and accidents over 15 years. The jury foreman went white as he flipped through them. Richard was still screaming, this is insane. I'm a doctor. I help people. That retard attacked me in my own home, and 2 bailiffs had to pin him to the table. The jury took 11 minutes to find Tommy not guilty. Richard was arrested before he could leave the courtroom. Grace walked over to Tommy and wrapped her arms around him and whispered, thank you for saving my life. Tommy can't say, you're welcome, but the way he hugged her back said it for him.